Hey, John, when you get engaged, congratulations, but there's stuff you should do financially. And we're going to talk about that. We've created a checklist for everything to do when you get engaged. And this is going to be great information for if you just got engaged or if one of your kids just got engaged. Hi, I'm Bridget Sullivan Ramel. I've got a family financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm John Shearer. I've got a family financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin. Before we jump into our checklist for financial things to do when you get engaged, I want to just remind everybody, hit that subscribe button, help other people find this information on YouTube. And with that, I'm looking forward to getting into this, Bridget. And it was funny as you were describing things to do when you get engaged. My mind just jumped to holy mackerel. That's been a long time ago. I had hair way back then. Like holy cow. And I love that you said too that it's okay, it's not me, but I'm thinking about my kids are younger, but my friends' kids are in that position. One just got engaged, right? So we got to think about these things like, okay, it's helpful. I know a lot of our viewers are similar in age to you and I, but it's like, oh, this is a family thing, right? And what things to do when you do get engaged. And I know you deal with this a lot more than I do. I'm looking forward to hearing what's on your checklist.
Yeah, I got a lot of young people in my life, which is awesome. So, first thing I would say, and this is from personal experience, because I have not been married as long as you have, but still, well, at least I remember it more. Not anymore. The first thing is start saving together if you haven't already. So when we were dating, actually, we started saving together because we wanted to do some stuff together. And also, I got to admit, I was a little bit anxious about how is this going to work financially with my husband. And he suggested, well, why don't we open a savings account? We'll both put in, we started actually small, like 200 a month each. And then, the thing is that you start getting acclimated to the power of getting married and the power of saving with somebody else is that you don't have to do it all. Like it's twice as much as you put in, which is nice. It's a nice feeling. So I would say that it's a great, it's a foundational skill for a relationship. And so it's a good time to start.
And you're talking about, as I hear there, Bridget, setting up a joint checking account, savings account, whatever, and then putting some money into it each month, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we had a savings account at an online internet bank that was high interest. We put both of our names on it. And then we just put in a couple $100 a month and it started earning interest. And then we were off and running.
Yep. Yep, that's great. As you talk about that, I love that personal experience, right? You've been through that. I was much younger and we didn't have any money to put together, so it didn't make any difference at that stage for us. But one of the things that I'm thinking that made me think about as far as on my checklist is just sharing your financial situation with your soon-to-be spouse, right? So one's saving. I love that idea. Let's start working on stuff together. But the other, and I heard you say, which I might have interpreted, but like, hey, how is this whole financial thing going to go? And the folks that we do work with, we've got people where it's like, well, if you don't know, does that person have credit card debt, right? Are we, or do we think alike when it comes to saving for retirement or other things? And so we talk about people like just, actually have a sharing of, hey, here's what I've got, right? Here's my balance sheet, here's tax return, and just be open. Our society tends to be so closed and put a stigma on money. And like, man, we can talk about that whole thing separately, that maybe we shouldn't do that in general. But when you're getting married to somebody, like, no, that's a place where you have to have open communication, right? So just sharing your actual financials, I think, is one of the checklist items.
Yeah. And you want to be able to talk to your spouse about it. A lot of times at this point, people have student loan debt. And so it's just being open about it. This is how much it is. This is what I'm doing. This is my payment. I think personally, we talk a decent amount on this channel about credit cards, and you want to especially see how does this person approach credit cards, and is it responsible adult behavior? That's what I'm going to say. Or is it maybe they're spending too much and they haven't figured out credit cards yet? So I think those are important things to think about at this stage.
Yeah. What else? Sorry, what's next on your checklist?
I think the next thing is start thinking about your wedding. And I think there's two ways to plan a wedding. There's one intentionally, And then there's the other, I'm going to just wait out and look at what the wedding planning sites and see what my friends were doing and do what everybody else seems to be doing because that's socially okay. Then nobody will criticize me and it will cost $100,000
What it
or
costs. Yeah.
whatever, a lot of
Right.
money, right?
Right.
And so I think what you want to do is set aside, like set out in front, like how much do we want to spend on this? And what's included. So already before you even get to that point, like planning the wedding, a lot of people these days take these photos of their engagement. They want to memorialize that. So, okay, we got an expense already that somebody paid for.
Right.
It seems to me like that should be a joint expense, not just they are borne by whoever popped the question. So that is what I would say is think, and the things that I like to talk through with people are how much do you want to spend? Just like if you were going to say, how much do I think this should cost? And then number two is what are your values and what do you want people to feel like at your wedding and after your wedding?
Yeah.
Now, this was interesting. I had a clients that I worked with, and they said they wanted to have people have an elevated aesthetic experience. So one of them was a graphic designer, and the other person was another creative person. And so they ended up having having it at an art gallery, and they had two different musicians, one on one side, one on the other side, and they kind of alternated. And they really felt like they got that aesthetic experience. Now, not everybody's going to want that. I know at my wedding, I wanted people to have just fun.
Yeah.
So the first thing we did is hired the band, and then we spent a lot of money on that, and then kind of worked around everything else for the budget.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. Afterwards, I was like, I don't know if I should have done it that way, but that's what we did.
Well, and I love that idea of being intentional as you described on things, right? And
Mhm.
what it was interesting, my reaction when you first said, "Hey, what do you want to spend?" I mean, golly, it's like how much do I want to spend on a SpaceX trip to Mars or something? Like, I've got no idea what it even, I want to spend $500, right, or something like this.
Okay.
So I really like that idea of saying what's actually important to you,
Right.
right? And I love the graphic designer example of for them perhaps, right? That visual, that experience was really meaningful as opposed to an add-on of some sort or the thing that you see on social media or other places or the wedding magazines that tell you, oh, here's what you should be doing. And
Right.
you're like, listen, how do I feel about that? What are the things that I want it to look like and to feel like? Right. And then and then start to work with how we
Right.
talk a lot in our office about, for clients in general financial planning, they need to come up with the what. Here's
Right.
what. And then our job is to come up with the how, right? And planning a wedding, don't figure out the how and then back into the what though, right? Like what is
Right.
it that you want? And then great, there's a lot of different ways to approach it. I really love that being intentional about it because those numbers get pretty big if you just let the cart get out in front of the horse.
Yeah, it's a whole industry. And, I got a whole list of complaints about the industry as far as their service to people. Okay, but we have to move on. I'm sure the people get there and getting married can sympathize. Next is
That's
cash
right.
flow. Cash flow. How do you handle money coming in and money coming out? So a lot of times once you're married, you start joining your finances, but getting an idea of that. Tell me more what your thoughts are on cash flow.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. I think a lot of people these days, certainly more than when we were in that age range, are living together, right? And so maybe they've got some sort of cash flow thing figured out, or maybe they're just kind of like living together as roommates and hadn't really shared some of those things, right?
Right.
Um, and still a fair number of people, their first living together experience is getting married and then living together, right? And so it's that idea of exactly just that is who are gonna pay for things? How do we look at these things? Is it, can we, and I've got clients that one person pays the mortgage, the other person pays utilities, those sorts of things. I personally prefer the sort of the joint side of things. Everybody puts money in and then we pay our, joint expenses from a joint account as you described. but there's different ways to do it. The problems that I see come in are when people haven't had that conversation, haven't had that discussion, when a spouse is surprised to find out that her husband's got all kinds of credit card debt or, whatever it is, right? So it's, for me anyway, having that initial conversation, hey, here's all my stuff, but then that, all right, how is this going to look when we start intermingling our lives together, right? And just the communication for me is such a big part that gets overlooked because it's exciting to plan the wedding and the bachelor and bridal parties and the
Right.
honeymoon and like that's all awesome. And
Yeah.
then some of these realities get overlooked. So for me anyway, it's not necessarily this big hammer of all these things you have to do. It's but yeah, but you got to not forget the stuff, right? Not forget to talk about how do you want to work cash flow together?
Yeah. Right. And then finally, we want to talk about, are you going to have a prenup? Prenup. I think of the Seinfeld episode where George wanted to break up with somebody, or he wanted to call off the wedding, and so he asked for a prenup. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah, right.
so when do you recommend a prenup, John?
Well, and I think that people need to think about it. We're talking about debt and some other things that might crop up as you start to merge your lives together. And in certain states, Wisconsin is a community property state, so everything is mixed together, whether it's in my name or my wife's name, right? There's some other things. Marital property does apply in some other states like Illinois,
Sure.
right? But it's in our law in Wisconsin. And just to know, like, okay, what am I getting into here, right? And to know what your rights and your rules are with things. So we recommend that people think about it. How do you want to have this? And it kind of sucks to think about when you're excited to get married, right? But the reality is a lot of people end up not being married and going their separate ways. And just to give some thought to how do you feel about those things? You're like, listen, let's just split it all up 50-50. Great, let's put it in writing, right? Or hey, wait, whatever I came into with whatever we each came into to the marriage with, we leave with, let's memorialize that. So I have encouraged people to think about those things, and I rarely see problems when it's in writing, or there's fewer problems when things aren't documented and they haven't had the conversations about it. That's when I see problems come up.
Yeah.
What do you do as far as recommending prenups or marital settlement agreements, that sort of thing?
Well, I actually like your advice of like making an agreement of something like whatever we came into, we go out with. That makes sense, and if you're going to get a prenup, have both people have lawyers. So that means it's going to be kind of, like that it can get complicated. But I really look at what are the dollars involved a lot, because sometimes I've seen people with who have inherited a bunch of money.
Hmm.
And so like it just depends on how much money you've got. Like what are the dollars about?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and so it's generally the concept is that money that's earned while you're married is joint. It's 50-50. It doesn't matter if one person's bringing it all in and the other person is not. Like that's the basic concept, and it's going to vary state by state. But it's not like if you're staying at home raising the kids, you get zero and the other person is getting all of it. So
Yeah.
that's the basic concept. So what are you coming in with? And another basic concept is you don't get some of the stuff that the other person came in with. That's not just automatic unless it's part of what you guys decide to do together. And another concept is that when you inherit money, it goes to you.
Yeah.
It's not marital property. Like, so if you inherit money, either before you're married or while you're married, it generally, I would say, goes to you, not to your merit, and it doesn't become marital property. So
Yeah.
I like people to get familiar with the rules. And again, it depends on how much money are we talking about, and
I like that.
what's the family situation. It can vary so much.
And like so many other things we talk about, it's about being intentional. Should you do one or not? There's no answer to that, but be
Yeah.
intentional, know the rules, right? I love that side of it. And that's probably a great place to wrap up this episode here. Again, I'm John Shear, and I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin.
I'm Bridget Sullivan Ramel. I've got a family financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. Both John and I are members of ACP, or the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners, where you can find a planner who thinks like we do all over the country. Although feel free to call John or I also. Also, can't leave without saying, please subscribe.
That's right.